We're at the 2018 CROI. We're here with the Fair Pricing Coalition folks. And the Fair Pricing Coalition started a number of years ago, quite a few years, and you can background that a little bit if you want to, but it's a very important organization because you try to do the best you can to get the drug prices to a level that's affordable for people that actually pay for it, and others work with the whole system. So I'll start out with Tim because you wanted to kind of give us the background on that, I guess.
Sure. I think maybe the best sort of way to frame this is just sort of talking about a lot of moving pieces that are happening in 2018 alone. Number one, this is probably going to be one of our biggest years for the launch of new HIV products ever. And what I mean by that is we have essentially really 4 new brand name drugs that are going to be becoming available this year. We started with Biktarvy, which is Gilead's single tablet regimen that contains it's bictegravir plus TAF plus FTC that was approved and launched last month. We're going to be seeing the approval of ibalizumab, which is a monoclonal antibody, really important drug for really sort of cross-class resistant drug resistance, which is certainly a very important component of our HIV treatment regimen. I think we're going to be looking for that around April. We're also going to see Janssen's single tablet regimen, which is going to be Darunavir plus cobicistat plus TAF plus FTC. That will be launched later this year, along with a new product from Merck, which is going to be doravirine, which is its non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitor, plus really off-patent or generic versions of the original formulation of tenofovir plus 3TC. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Now, in addition to those brand name products that are coming up, we're really seeing a number of generic drug products that are flooding into the market. And what's really interesting is we do have a number of different moving pieces around that in terms of drug pricing, because whenever generics enter the space, we start to see a lot of competition for amongst, just in terms of pricing, sort of across different payer systems like commercial plans, Medicaid, so on and so forth. And so I think we can certainly talk a little bit more about this later, which is that those cost savings are good. The one thing that is absolutely essential is that we need to make sure that those cost savings actually work for society at large, but also to make sure that they're actually working for people who are living with HIV and even vulnerable to HIV infection. So that's sort of like that's really one big thing that's happening this year. What's also happening is we're actually starting to see a lot of sort of moving pieces around the copay assistance programs, which are really important for people living with HIV. And so I guess with that, why don't we just turn this over to Lynda, who can talk a little bit more about some of the other work that we're doing.
Copays are where the rubber meets the road. People actually.
Well, it's the way people get their drugs, really affordably, because nobody can afford these drugs. And one of the things that we've of course, we're called the Fair Pricing Coalition, so we deal with drug pricing, and we've really talked about issues of parity, so that the next drug that comes along that fills the space that other drugs, people become resistant, they have side effects. There's always reasons for new drugs. Anyway, we've asked for parity for those drugs so that they wouldn't be 10 times higher. Of course, every year they raise the prices, so they're 10 times higher anyway. But
or
that's another story, right?
Yeah.
Right, but sometimes some are twice a year and not just one. But anyway, one of the other things that we've done meticulously is dealt with each company's access programs. And by access programs, I mean they're patient assistance programs, which give drug to patients for free if they have no insurance. Okay, which is nowadays, given now that we have for as long as we have Obamacare, there's not as many people that don't have insurance of some kind. I mean, there's always some, but anyway. And then for people with insurance, there are these copay assistance programs, and they have people have insurance, but the deductibles are so high that they have to. It's really like catastrophic insurance, is what I say. It's the way I look at it. And if you have to pay down your copays or your out-of-pocket costs. Your copay essentially, oftentimes is $1,000, $2,000 a year before you have, access to any drugs. So the problem with that is obvious. Who's got that kind of money? So what we've done with each one of the companies, and it's not as many companies as it used to be, but we started quite a few years ago making sure that they offered people co-pay assistance with these drugs. Now, the controversy with co-pay assistance is this, that most of our drugs, until very recently, and Tim alluded to that, you know, we didn't have generics. What we had were all these brand name drugs. And so for brand name drugs, if you give a coupon or some sort of, you know, some way to get the drug with copay assistance from the drug company that is usually dealt with at the counter, you know, the point of service at the pharmacy, you know, that's fine. But in other words, there are a lot of drugs that are generics in the marketplace for other diseases. And the problem with that is they, you know, if there's a generic alternative and you have a copay coupon from the company, your insurance company ends up paying more money than they would. So, you know, most payers, oftentimes the government sees it as an inducement to buy your drug as opposed to other person's drug for more money.
Which is,
and they
which
never,
is kind of illegal.
Well, yeah, but they never
unethical.
seem to realize that there are people like people in the HIV community that mostly have these brand name drugs and need, you know, these drugs to survive and can't afford the $2,000, $3,000. It's what is it, like $37.50 now? You know, up front before you even get an aspirin, you know, which is not a prescribed drug. I'm just, you know what I'm talking about. So, you know, we have dealt with every company for these copay assistance programs. All the companies are the same. We make them cover all of that deductible, you know, that's required every year from Obamacare, you know, the regulations for that. Every year we make the deductible higher because it usually goes higher. We make the FPL, the federal poverty level, well, that the copay does not even that really goes with the patient assistance programs. But the bottom line is, we've really worked very hard so that each company has the same criteria, so that there's no hidden sort of eligibility criteria or whatever, like it used to be years ago. It was all these, oh yeah, we have these programs, but nobody could find them. Nobody knew what, you know, what the eligibility requirements were. So, yay, we've got all that settled. Well, the big deal now is that there's a threat. And some companies have actually started saying, okay, well, if you have a copay assistance program that you're involved with and you get money from them, that will not count towards your deductible. It never, it always counted toward the deductible before. So in other words, at some point, if your deductible is paid, your actual out-of-pocket cost is gone. But now they're saying, okay, well, if you have a copay card and it gives you $500 a month, we're not counting that anymore towards your out-of-pocket costs. So you will essentially always have these deductibles. That's not sustainable. Who can pay for these drugs? So, I mean, some of the companies are doing it, and I don't know, a number of us have been working with different organizations to try and work this out. But, you know, I always say that it used to be the drug companies had the, you know, the green light to do anything they wanted, and now it's the insurance companies. They really, and then, you know, you talk to them and they say, well, it's not us, it's our, you know, our insured, you know, the companies that we work for, and they pick these plans and whatever. And so, but it's really, the patients are stuck in the middle of this, and
Yes.
I don't know how we're going to work this out if they all start saying, well, you know, you still have a deductible, you know, into 7 months later, and people are not going to be able to afford their drugs, and they're going to get sick, and they're going to go in the hospital, or they're going to die. It's really that serious.
So the companies have always had this, I mean, there's always a process that has to happen.
Yeah.
And it seems as though they should have figured out in reality how this would play out. I know that's our job as activists, advocates, but, you know, it seems like they should look forward thinking and say, this
Well,
is how it will actually be in real life.
I think that, you know, industry is being as forward-thinking as they possibly can be. The thing is we're sort of in uncharted territory in HIV, partly because a number of different commercial plans, you know, they haven't been holding HIV necessarily to the same standard that they hold a number of other different diseases. So we don't know where these prohibitions against applying the copay assistance programs to deductibles is in fact going to happen. This year, and we're actually going to start seeing this in a couple of months, we're going to start to see where those plans are happening. So that in the various companies that we've spoken to, I think they're trying to figure out where this is going to happen. Which commercial companies, which commercial insurance companies, and which plans. Right now, I think that we're all sort of like looking to avoid. We just don't know where this is going to happen. And I think the one thing that we're really determined to do, and as I said, we need to be able to work with the companies and to really understand this. So, I think that the one thing that we've encouraged is companies to be as forthright as they can be with us, so that we can sort of do our work with the commercial plans to make sure that they are that they are really being fair to those who are living with HIV.
So you have to be nimble and as quick as you can when you first start to uncover things
Correct.
that unintended consequences.
Yeah.
That you explore them as they unfold quickly.
Right.
Because you don't want to have any, like she's saying, anybody that.
But there's a caveat to this, and I think there's a really important caveat to this. Is this? I think the one thing that we struggle with within the Fair Pricing Coalition is I think that if we're so focused on the actual copay assistance programs, that actually helps to provide access. But if we focus on that, it doesn't allow us to really sort of address the underlying factor here, which is the fact that the prices of these drugs are too high. Mm-hmm. So, while we're actually taking a look at the programs that are necessary to ensure access, we also need to hold some other feet to the fire just to make sure that the prices of these drugs are kept at bay, or are in fact they're actually brought down. Because that's what's driving this whole thing. Drug pricing is what's driving this whole thing. Yeah. There's no mistake about that. It's drug pricing, and the high drug pricing is what's driving this. So we can't forget about what's happening underneath here while we're sort of like operating in this realm of trying to ensure access, because drug pricing itself is a barrier to access in this country. Mm-hmm. And that, I think the problem is that we are working within a broken healthcare system. We are working within an opaque healthcare system. We're operating within a healthcare system by which so many of these variables, it's backroom negotiations, it's secret rebates, it's secret discounts. We don't quite know what's happening there. So I think we're all sort of operating in this very sort of confusing and really just incredibly frustrating space. So we need to take care of that. So I think while we're working on the various access issues, and we don't want a single person living with HIV to go without access to treatments that are going to save their lives. But again, pricing is operating here, and so we, as the Fair Pricing Coalition, do continue to remain focused on pricing as a big factor in all of this. This isn't just on the insurance industry.
Right, and and the problem with that is, the healthcare system is broken. There's nothing for pricing, okay? Mm-hmm. There is no system in place. Well, there's a lot of systems in place for the government and for private things where they're all secretive and nobody knows what. So, Tim again alluded to that. But, the problem in the United States is, you could be sued or thrown out of your company if you don't get the most you can for your shareholders. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that says you can be sued or prosecuted if people die because they can't get your drugs because they cost too much. It sucks, there is no way. And, we try to deal with these companies reasonably, but, they have their side of the story too. They have their shareholders. And over the years, we've had a decent relationship with a lot of them. Mm-hmm. But, that doesn't mean we can make them do what's right. Mm-hmm. That's why I said we tried to make them, if you think about it, if they raise the price of something better, that's the standard for industry. New, better, shinier, whatever, and, let's charge more. And they all know now that they can't get away with that. But they're still stuck in this high range.
I think part of the problem is the fact that the companies always have this 10-year plan. And so you really can't make dramatic changes and say, okay, we're going to ask you to cut 10%. I know Marty started that with you and the old group, but it was important to at least say, we got to have this big thing going on.
Well, it's very hard to even get them to charge the same amount of money as the drug that was previously approved, if they think they've got a new, better drug coming down. Yeah. But when I say the payers now are the ones that are running the show, if they put you on a tier, if they tier your drug, or if they don't put you on the formulary, then you're screwed. So they're the ones that have the power now, okay? Mm-hmm. And the thing about that is we've been for years saying to the companies, lower the price, sell more of your drug. And now they're finally buying that argument because why? The payers are putting the screws to them. And that's, for many years they left HIV alone. The drug prices were high, but it wasn't as many people as, say, with cardiovascular disease. But once the prices started getting astronomical, then we're like right in the line of fire. And how that started was with the hepatitis drugs, shone a light on hepatitis and HIV, because it was the company Gilead that had hepatitis and HIV drugs. So
I think we're in a very interesting situation, particularly this year, where with the entrance of a number of generic drug products, that includes a co-formulation of tenofovir plus 3-TC, which is a comparator, if you will, to Gilead's Truvada and Descovy. We now have generic abacavir and 3-TC, which is a direct comparator to ViiV's Epsicom. We saw the approval of atazanavir is now available generically. Ritonavir is going to be released generically. And what's important about all of that, and certainly efavirenz, both as a standalone and efavirenz in combination with tenofovir and 3-TC, sort of as a comparator to Atripla. So a lot of the drugs that are still being used, some much more commonly than others, some of the drugs that have been used for many years now they're still being used, and now we're starting to see generics come into play. So what's going to happen is, and that we anticipate those are going to come in at a much lower price. Commercial plans, or basically all payers, are going to start to figure out where they can actually cut costs there. Right. And what's going to happen is with the generics, the commercial plans are really going to love that, because that's where they can get their most savings. Number one, the one thing that we're not too clear about is, are there going to be significant savings for Medicaids? Right. Because what's happening is, even though the list price is here, what's happening is the commercial plans, they might pay this, the Medicaids might pay this, the VA might pay this, and all of what's happening down here, we just don't know about. There's no transparency there. So all of that's going to change. But I think the one thing we can expect is that, to Lynda's point, that a number of these, both public and private insurers, they're actually, I think we're going to start to see them really sort of like, revving up their desire to regulate the market. So, for example,
through a formulary,
they might want to take people either off or put them on, maybe instead of a single tablet regimen from one of the products we've been using for years, they might not want to put them on that, but instead put them on, one tablet twice a day. Using tenofovir, 3-TC, so on and so forth. We might see that. And I don't think that, never is that desirable. Never is that desirable to see. But we are going to be seeing that. And I think this isn't going to be about patients deciding. This isn't going to be about providers deciding. This is going to be commercial plans and the public payers deciding. So, I don't know how much of that, the Fair Pricing Coalition, I don't know how much of it HIV activists can actually tackle. There are a lot of moving pieces there. So there's a lesson here. It's like, if we want to ensure that, those monopoly, super expensive single tablet regimens continue to remain available to all people living with HIV. It's like, those manufacturers really need to come to the table with all those payers and ensure that they are on equal footing with these cheaper options.
Right. Because otherwise they'll just, I hate, like you say, to see that the doctor and the patient is not deciding what they take. Because it makes a difference.
We've worked for years to, we're old-time activists, all right? And our thing was drug development. We worked for years to get these best combinations, to get these single tablet regimens. There's a lot of people that they forget to take their medicines. It's much easier to take one pill once a day, but they're going to get broken up. Tim is right about that. So what do? Is it better that everybody gets something than, half the people get one pill once a day and the other half don't get? It's just a mess. Yeah. It's a mess. And it's going to be coming apart at the seams, like everything else in this country at this point.
There's a lot of moving pieces this year.
Yeah, it is, our moving pieces are whether people live or die, whether they end up in the hospital. We're not kidding here, And plus, don't forget, if people's viral loads are skyrocketing, then they're going to be spreading HIV all over the place as well, and more people are going to get it. Yeah. So it's really. And
I just want to give you a sort of back up a little bit and sort of give you a frame for like why this really matters. I think that because in HIV we've been extremely lucky because we do have a patchwork of system in place to make sure that people have access to care and they have access to treatment, right? I mean, we are very, very fortunate.
We always did the best we could at the time for all different reasons.
Between private insurers, Ryan White, Medicaid, Medicaid expansion, we really do have a really robust patchwork. The VA,
Right.
so on and so forth. So we're very fortunate. But I just remember something is that when you take a look at the national level, really only 49% of people who are living with HIV, only really more than half people of the 1.1 million people who are estimated to be living with HIV in country, still have yet to get on treatment and to get their viral load to undetectable. That's a big lift. So if we're operating within a system that particularly under the current administration and the current Congress, where Medicaid is really hanging on by a thread. There could be block grants. I mean, I've seen that we've seen this in the headlines in terms of what's happening. I think that we have to be very, very cautious, and I think that so we have to do a whole lot more. We have to get a whole lot more people into care and onto treatment. But the resources to do that are finite. Yeah. They are limited. And drug pricing, again, plays into that. So this is why we're at where we're at today. This is why the FTC has consistently had skin in the game.
Right.
I'm hopeful that we can make the changes that are necessary, but like you say, it's the moving pieces are, and I think maybe having a meeting with multiple pharmaceutical companies at the same time.
Well, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Well, you can't really meet with them
the
same time because there's all these laws about price fixing and stuff like that. But
you can have the same discussion.
I mean, it's on their radar screens, but they're all keeping it very close to the vest because they don't want to say that they're going to cover everybody. Because then, what reason do companies have to listen to us or to make, not companies, but the payers? In other words, they're not saying what their game plan is going to be if this happens.
Well, the best treatment is prevention. Best prevention is treatment.
Right.
We have to get.
Right.
I mean, it's been said so many times. People
Right.
are being meetings talking about prevention. Let's just get those that are
I'm with
infected
you.
on treatment.
And that needs to be
with you.
affordable. And
Yeah.
then it's like when I say affordable, that's affordable to people living with HIV.
Right.
And of course, affordable to the systems on which we rely to really cover the best standard of care for people living with HIV.
I mean, we've been saying for years that this is going to blow up, and now we're here.
We're there. And you guys are playing a lion's share of the work in this fight.
We're still roaring at 'em
I
for
can't
all the good
imagine
it
better
does.
people than you guys and the other members of this
We're
group.
still here.
But it's
harder,
But
it's...
you need to put the word out, and I'm glad that we were able to share with our audience the challenges that face us and as activists and the people who are living with AIDS and the doctors and the providers and the governments, and it's a lot of work.
I mean, hope to be able to come back to you next year with nothing but good news.
With a better story.
I want that.
Better
I want
news.
that. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Fred.
it.
Thank you, Fred.